Okay, we're going to show you how to create a dashboard in Salesforce that reports and compares accounts that have been exposed to advertising by ListenLoop against accounts that have not been exposed to advertising by ListenLoop. And the goal here is going to be to identify the amount of opportunities for each of these different cohorts, and also look at stage duration as a precursor to sales velocity, doing a similar type of cohort analysis. So we're going to create these reports, put them in a dashboard so that you can quickly view this information and present it to your stakeholders, management, teammates, and so on. So we're going to start by creating a field, a formula field inside of Salesforce. Click on your gear, go to Setup Home. And once you're there, you'd like to use the Quick Find. Go to Object Manager. And we're going to be adding a field in the account object. You can click on the New. And you're going to be using a formula type field here. Click on Next. You're going to be using one that's called Text. Click on Next. First, we need to put a field label. Let's call this ListenLoop Influence. Click on Next. So now we need to put in our formula. I've got a formula here. This is saying if an account's impressions is greater than 0, then they've been exposed to ads. If that evaluates to false, then they have not been exposed to ads. Okay. Now this is a field that should already exist on the account object that was created when you first set up your ListenLoop Salesforce integration. Check the syntax, make sure that's correct. Looks good. We'll click on Next. Next. And save. Okay, we have our field now inside of the account object, and it is setting up a two categories, one where account has been exposed to ads or not. Now we're going to navigate over to reports right here, and I'm going to click on New Report. We're going to create a report of the opportunity type. So we'll click on Opportunities and click on Create. Okay, now I'm going to set up a time frame of all time, but you could really set this up to whatever you want. And I'm going to choose the close date is fine. You'll notice I have show all opportunities. Okay. Now we're going to find the field that we just created. Typically it's under custom info. And we have it here. So we'll go ahead and add this to the table. You can see here some have ads, some don't have ads. We're going to switch this to a matrix style report. Now I'm going to grab this field and I'm going to navigate and drag and drop it into the row grouping. Now you can see that this creates two groups, LL ads, no ListenLoop ads. Okay, now we need to identify the amount, summarize the amount field. And that will be placed in here. Okay, now we can save it. Call this opportunities influenced by ListenLoop. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and run that report. And what it's doing is it's performing a sum on the amount of opportunity value for each of the two cohorts with ads and without ads. So this looks good, but it's hard to visualize this as a table. So Now we're going to navigate over to the dashboard settings here, dashboards. And we're going to create a new dashboard. It's going to end up looking like this here. Let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to click on Edit, Add. We're going to search for the report that we just created. Okay, this one here. And we can choose how we want to display it. I think this sideways or horizontal bar chart is good. And these are the correct option settings. And that being the case, we're going to go ahead and click Add. And there you have it. We just created from scratch an opportunities influenced by ListenLoop report. You can see it matches and looks like the one I had pre-prepared. Now we're going to repeat this process for the ListenLoop influence on stage duration. I'm going to navigate back to reports. And I'm going to edit one that I already have just to speed this up. All the steps are going to be identical. What you're going to do, however, in this one is you're going to, again, add the ListenLoop influenced field, drag it over as a row grouping. But in this one, you're going to create or grab the stage duration field and add it as a column grouping. And then you could take the stage field and add it as a column grouping on top. And by doing that, you'll be able to set up these different stages, each with their average duration. So let's go ahead and actually do that from scratch because I want to make sure that you're able to follow every step there. And click on New Report, Opportunities, Create. Again, I'm going to have all opportunities. Close date is fine. I'm going to look at all-time range. And I'm going to grab the stage duration as I had mentioned. Let's go ahead and grab that. And I'm going to start by doing a summarize this field. Click. I'm going to do the average. Apply. Okay. And I'm going to grab, of course, the ListenLoop influenced field that we created. Now I'm going to change this to a matrix format. And I'm going to use the ListenLoop influenced as a row grouping. Okay. There we have it. This is our row grouping. And here you could see that we have the average stage duration. And now we're going to add the stage by stage grouping. So I grab my stage field and I drag it on top here. All right, that looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and save this. I'll save the report. Okay, report was saved. I'm going to go ahead and click on Run Report. And just as before, this is a very difficult report to visualize given all the different cells and activity happening here. So let's go back to our dashboard. Let's add a new dashboard report. And I'm going to look up that one we just created. You can see here there's a lot of different ways to visualize this. You could visualize it as a per stage bar graph to compare it. That might be the easiest way. You may want to use it as a vertical stacked graph so you can see how those two compare side by side. For purposes of this illustration, I already have this stacked graph. That's one way to visualize it. Let's go ahead and look at it as a chart like this where we can compare each individual one. Click on add. Let's make this nice and big. And so here you could see some interesting information about when you have advertising versus no advertising and how the average amount of time an account spends in a given stage. So both of these reports can be extremely useful as you seek to prove out the value of advertising, especially with respect to brand awareness type campaigns and nurture campaigns to all the different accounts that you may be targeting. So last thing I'm going to leave you with is a bit of inspiration for you to play with this and identify reports for your own company that could be extremely useful. So I'm going to go back to the reports area, and here I've already started creating a report, and it's similar to the summary of amount value by cohort, but in this case I've added an additional grouping, and that's the forecast category grouping. And so in this report, we're looking at accounts that have been exposed to ads versus accounts that haven't been exposed to ads, the sum of their opportunity values across each of these different forecast categories, such as omitted, pipeline, best case, committed, and closed. And so now if we save this report, you'll be able to see a slightly different picture of what is happening with the ads that you're running across these accounts. But forecast category, ListenLoop test. All right, we'll go ahead and run the report. And now it's time to visualize this. Again, click on add. Again, we have an option of seeing a stacked bar graph, like you see here, or these individual lines. So you could see, compare pipeline versus pipeline, commit versus commit, whatever you feel is best to visualize it. In this one, I'm going to do a vertical stack graph. I'm going to make this nice and large. Okay. So what we're seeing here, if you look at this, is forecast category closed with advertising, $44,000 versus $49,000. Committed versus committed. Pipeline versus pipeline. So that's another way to kind of slice the data so that you can identify how your advertising is performing by looking at the data that's inside of your CRM, often the source of truth for many companies. Okay, if you have any questions, feel free to email Rodrigo at ListenLoop, and we'll be sure to follow up with another video series that expands on the questions that you provide. Thanks.